Hello viewers. Today in this video we'll explain about Android data store. Before jumping onto the Android Studio project, we'll see some theory about it. Jetpack data store, as the name says, this is included as part of Jetpack library in Android. So this is a solution to store key value based or typed objects. So this uses Kotlin coroutines and flows. Data storage using this mechanism will be done asynchronously, consistently, and transactionally. So we can say this is an alternate to shared preferences. There are two types in data stores. One is preferences data store and another one is proto data store. Preferences data store, it uses to store key value based data. So for example, we want to store a key value based data, so we will use this data store. So this does not require any predefined schema and it does not provide the type safety. Whereas the proto data store is exactly opposite to the preference data store, which stores data instances of a custom data type, and we need to specify a schema definition using protocol buffers and provides the type safety. So in this particular tutorial, what I'll do is I'll use preference data store using Android Kotlin project. So I'll be creating one more video for proto data store and will be explaining how to create the custom data type and how to define the schema, etc. We know shared preferences are used to store the data in the local storage of the mobile application. So this is an interface for accessing and modifying the preference data. Generally, we use edit function to edit the data or store the data, etc. For retrieving, we have multiple methods like get all, get float, get long, get boolean, etc., etc. But the problem with this shared preference is the shared preferences are getting deprecated from API 29. If your project is supporting before API 29 till API 28, it's fine. But in API 29, the same shared preferences will be deprecated. So this is as per the documentation given in the official Android documentation. So the alternate of that will be the Jetpack data store. Since we use Kotlin as the official programming language and coroutines are included in Kotlin and even the flows are included, so using the data store in every project will be nice approach anymore. So we'll jump on to the hands-on experience. What I'll do is I'll open a new project. So as part of this particular tutorial, what I'm doing is I'm using an empty activity. I'm not using the compose activity. The same thing can be performed in the compose as well. Jetpack compose library, the difference with the approach what I follow in this video is the user interface design will be little different. Using Kotlin programming language, we will be designing the user interface. So here what I have done is I have created a separate XML for the user interface and I'll be mapping that to the activity class. What I'll do is I'll create an empty activity. In the new project window, I'll choose empty activity and click on next. So the application name, what I gave is data store example. So I'll be storing it in my desktop. So let me make it like this data store example, and I choose the language as Kotlin, and I'm leaving all other fields as default, and I'll click on finish. So once I click on finish, there is a project created for me and the Gradle sync is in progress. We'll wait till the sync is completed. Once the sync is completed, we'll have a look into the project level build.gradle file where we may have to add some of the dependencies with respect to the data stores. So first, let me change this to the version, the stable version which is given. So that is this version, and let me have a sync. So I just changed this to 1.8.0, and I have to have few other things in my build.gradle file. First of all, I need the view binding. I'm not using Kotlin synthetics or the traditional way like find view by ID. So those things I'm not using for finding the user interface element. So what I do is I enable view binding. So how to use view binding in the project, we'll see this later. And after that, I have already copied few of the dependencies from official documentations of those data store and coroutines. So I'll be directly pasting this. So I'll be giving this in the video description as well. You can copy this and directly paste it in your project if you want to have a hands-on experience. So the first thing is data store preferences I'm using. So version 1.0.0. So this is released on August 4th, 2022. So this is the stable version. Uh, till then we were using the alpha and beta versions. Now we are having a stable version. Then coroutines and lifecycle scope related implementation we have to add in our build.gradle file. What I'll do is I'll sync a Gradle project once. So yeah, the sync is completed now. Next, what we see is we have a main activity here. This is an empty main activity. And in the resource layout, we should have a respective XML file here. So if you see this, there is a text view. So we don't need this text view. So what I'll do is I'll directly go ahead and delete. Now, as part of this particular project, I have already designed an XML. So to save the time, what I'll do is I'll copy paste this and I'll explain how I did. Before that, what I do is I will open the string file and add the required string resources. So these are the resources, whatever I have used for actual text view, etc. So I'll show you where these are used. So I will directly replace the code with whatever I have already designed in background. So these are the code I have used. Let me come back to the split view. I have a constraint layout where we have a text box. So this is enter key text box and we have an edit text here. So here we will be entering the key and then user will enter the value in the value text field, and when user clicks on save, the value, the key and the value both will be stored in the data store. So these are constrained actually, so you can see that the inside the constraint layout we have constraint. Next we have one more section where we will be having a retrieval key. So we will, what we will do is we will just enter the key which is already stored here, and when we click on read, what it does, it will read from our data store and that particular value will be shown here. So this is a tool text I have added just for our reference. As of now, there is no text set. Once we click on read, once the read operation is completed, whatever the value we get from data store, that will be shown here. So this is the user interface, the basic user interface. So the margin, padding, alignment and all I have added based on our requirement, and you can design by your own. So next what we do, we'll come back to main activity. Our main activity is the actual place where we write the logic. So if you are using the Jetpack Compose library, your actual main activity file, what you do is you'll be having your own user interface design as well in that. Using composables. So here we are not using composables, we are using the old traditional method of XML. So in that case, we will be good. I have a string resource where I have already added my strings, whatever is needed. So those strings are used here. Say for example, this hint text is used here. So this is done. In the main activity, we have already done the setup. So we have on create. In the on create method, we are setting the activity main XML. So I will change a little bit in the skeleton. So since we are using view binding, we'll change it to a view binding logic. So what I'll do is I'll initialize a late init variable, which is binding, that is activity main binding. So once the creation is successful, what I'll do is binding equal to activity main binding dot inflate I'll do, and we have the layout inflator. So layout inflator is called from get layout inflator method. This is default in the activity, so we can directly call this property. So this is a property which will be set using get layout inflator method. So here instead of r dot layout dot main, what I do is I'll do binding dot root. So basically this binding will be our activity main binding only. So when we see this class, it will be navigating back to this particular page. So that root element, whatever we have, that will be a constraint layout. Root of that particular class is a constraint layout. If we see here, there is a constraint layout. So that we are setting here. So this is step one. So we'll come back to the actual logic where we implement our data store. So data store is defined in the context level. So what I'll do is val context dot data store. So this is a type of data store, and the type we are using as preferences. So make sure that we are using the preferences from androidx.datastore-preferences.core. So this will be our package. So I'll use the by keyword, and so this we will take preference data store. So preference data store will give a name as settings. So anything we can give. So this is user defined name. So I'm giving the name as settings. So this particular data store is defined by preference data store. So the step one is done. So the same data store we will be using. So what I'll do before writing the data store directly, what I'll do is I'll create the functions for storing and retrieving. So as I told, this uses coroutines and flow. So the functions where we perform the insertion and the retrieval operation on the data stores, this should be the suspend function since this uses coroutines. So what I'll do, private suspend function, let me name it as save. It takes two parameter. One is key of type string. The second parameter is value. This is also of type string and it returns nothing. So we are not retrieving anything. So we are just storing whatever user actually sends. So now what I will do is I'll create a data store. Before doing that, let me create a data store key. So val data store key. I'll create a local variable and I will make it a type of integer. Say for example, we are storing the integer values in the data store. So it depends on the requirement. So int preference key. So int preference key, and I'll give the key as the parameter. So if you see here, there are multiple preferences. Okay, preferences key. If I type preferences key, there are a list of functions which we can store. Say for example, boolean preference key, int preference key, double preference key, float, long, string set. So if you remember, this there are similar to this particular reference, there are similar functions available in store preference as well. Say for example, get int value, like the get boolean, get all, and get float, get long. Those kind of values are there. Those kind of functions are there actually in shared preferences as well. So these are similar to that. So if I want to store boolean, so I can use boolean preferences key. As of now, as I told, we'll consider we are storing integer value, so I'm using int preference key. So what I'm doing, I'm creating a data store key using this function. So what it does is it will return a key. The type will be integer. So it will return a preference key where the type will be integer. So next what I'll do is I'll try to store this value in our data store. So what I'll do is I need a context for this application. As I told, this data store is defined in the context level. So what I do, application context dot data store. So this will give the direct access to the data store, and I'll give edit. So again, this edit function, what we are doing is this is a lambda basically. In the edit lambda, let me rename this to a value called setting. So it will be a mutable object. So I'll mark it as settings. So what I'll do is setting. Let me rename it to settings to follow the same naming convention. Settings of data store key equal to value dot to int. Okay, so user will be passing the string. So here, since we are reading it from the edit text. So I have directly written it as string because we will directly send it from the edit text. Then whatever the value we receive, what we do is we convert it. So there might be a problem in this particular logic because we are directly converting value dot to int. So basically, if you see the documentation of toInt function, what it does is it will return the integer value. So it will convert whatever the value you passed, it will convert to the integer type and it will return. But the problem here is it throws an exception. So it throws number format exception. What if in the input field we enter the string? So there are two type of handling can be done. So one is restricting user to enter string value in the edit text. So what we can do is in this particular value field, we can restrict user to add the string value so that user will enter only numbers, no special characters, no string values, etc. Or else we can handle in this particular function that what if user enters a string and this value dot to int fails or it throws a number format exception. So I'll choose in this video, I'll choose the second option that we will handle here. Instead of adding this logic, what I do is I'll add a try catch block here. So it will throw an exception, and once it throws the exception, we manually handle this. So if this particular string value cannot be converted into int, it will come here. So what I'll do is I will put a log, or I'll put a toast, I say. Toast dot make text I'll use. So this requires the application context. The second parameter will be message. So what I print the message is fail to say have a look into the value you sent and toast dot length long, and I'm directly calling the show method. So why I put this particular message is like there is no other place where we may get the exception. The exception may be in this. So we can directly catch the number format exception. So I kept it as general. So what we do in this function is we will create the data store key based on the key value whatever user has set, and we will try to put that key in the data store, and we are trying to convert it into an integer. If some exception comes, we are catching that and we will be showing the toast. So this is what we are doing as of now. Then we'll write a function to retrieve. So again, this will be a suspend function since it runs on Kotlin. So I call it as read, and here only one parameter is needed, which is string, and it will return an integer. Okay. Or else what we can do is we can say uh, let it return string as well, but I'll handle it like this. So it will be a nullable integer because there might not be a value associated with the key whatever user has sent. So that time it will return null. So what I'll do is in this also again we need the preferences key. So what I do, let me copy paste here. So here also I need a data store key, which will be a preference key of type integer. So here what I'll do is I'll just read those. So let me read entire preferences. So val pref equal to application context dot data store. I'll access the data store as before dot data. So this will be a flow. If we see, so this particular data will be a flow. So whatever the first flow we get, I'll be reading that only. So let me say first. So I'll read the first flow, and I'll store it in a variable called pref. So what I'll do is I'll just return the value which is stored in the key. So what I'll do is I'll let me explain again. So in this line, what we are doing, we are getting the data store value. So this data store.data will return the flow to get the first one. So we are taking this. So in the flow, what it does is it will return the first element emitted by the flow. Then what I'm doing is in that value, I'll see if this has a data store key, which is of type integer. So if it is not there, it will return null. So that's why I have made this integer as nullable. We are ready with our save and read functions. Now we'll jump into the actual implementation where we will be writing the listeners for the buttons. So we have two buttons, one is for read and one is for store. So first what I'll do is I'll write for save button. So this will be the save button listener. So let me access binding. Since we have the binding, we can directly access that element using binding. Binding dot the button name is button save dot set on click listener. So I'll use the lambda. I'll not use the direct function. I'll use the lambda since it is easier way to write it. What I'll do is I have to call this function. So whenever the button save is clicked, I have to call the save function. The catch here is save is the suspend function which has to be run on coroutine. So this coroutine will be launched on lifecycle scope. So this lifecycle scope will be attached to the activity. What I'll do is I'll use again the lambda lifecycle scope dot launch. What I'll do is I'll call the save function. The save function takes two parameters as we know. The first parameter will be the key and the second parameter will be the value. So those key and values user will be already entered in the edit text. So if you see that there are two edit text key and value, so these two will be entered by user. The same we have to take it again. I'll access those using binding edit text key dot text dot toString. This is our first parameter. The second parameter will be the value. Again, I'll access it using binding dot et value. Edit text value is the name I have given. Again, I'll take that text dot toString. Again, so instead of handling it in the try catch block, if we are handling here, we may have to write it in the XML level. So I chose the second option. So what it does is it will save the actual value. So what I can do is I can write a toast here once it is successful. Let me do one thing. Toast dot make text application context record saved into data store successfully. Spelling mistake. Then what I'll do is toast dot length log dot show. So what I'll do, I'll call the save function when the save button is clicked, and I'll just make a toast. This is for our reference that the entry whatever we have done is successfully entered. Similarly, we have to have show button listener. Uh, or instead of show, this will be read button. Okay, the name whatever we have given. So here also same thing. We will be calling the read function which we have already utilized. Again, let me access this using binding dot btn read dot set on click listener, again using the lambda. So similar to the above implementation, so this is also a suspend function, so that we have to use a scope and we have to call it using that. So again, let me use lifecycle scope and let me use lambda again read. So this function, what I can do is I can store this value somewhere in the local variable for our reference, and what I'll do is I'll create a value called result. So this will be our actual variable, and here we are sending the key. So our key will be binding dot et retrieve key dot text dot string. So whatever the value I get, this is actually a nullable. So read function will return a null integer. So what I will do is, so if you see here, this returns a null integer. So what I'll do to store this, so after storing, what we are doing is we will be putting it back into the user interface. If you see here, we have a dedicated text here. So this text view, the name is TV read value. So let me put it back. For that, we need the string value. So what I'll do is for this, again, let me access by binding dot TV read value dot text property I will access. So what I'll do is value will be an integer value, whatever we are retrieving. So it's not value, my bad, it's result. So what I will do is I'll check a result is non-null and whether can we make it to string. If it is possible, we will display whatever is there in that value, or else I'll put a string called no value found for the given key. So let me push this to the screen. So if we can convert, so if it is not null and we can convert it into to string. So what I'll do, if it is not null, directly converting it to a string, and we'll be showing that in the read value text, or else we are pushing the hard coded value that no values found for the given key. So let me sync the Gradle once again, and let me build this. Let me pull my emulator. So, and what I'll do is I will run this application and we'll see how this looks. It will take some time for building. So our user interface should be there according to our expectation. Yes, this is well constrained. So it has key and value, and we have save button, and this is for retrieval. Let me try this. I will put as age and I'll put it as 20. And what I do, I'll click on save button. Yeah, this says record saved into data store successfully. Will try to enter the wrong value, that is I'll enter a string a b c d. So now what happens according to our logic, it will throw the number format exception because we are using to int function, and the catch block, what it does, it will show a toast. We'll try if it works. Yes, fail to save. Have a look into the value you set. So this value come this toast message comes again because we are running it on the scope lifecycle scope. So we are running it on the thread. So this will be there, so we can ignore that. Next, what happens is let me retry that and see. So what I will do is I will actually enter the value called age, the key called age, and I'll click on read, and the value we have written. So as a quick fix for this, what I'll do is I'll move this out from this place and I will add it here. So this should solve our problem, so that it will not asynchronously call. What it does is if it comes to this block only, then it will do this. So we'll try this out. So what I'll do is I'll enter a key called here, and I'll say q w e r something. I'll enter. You can see, yeah, this is correct. So now, so this will be blocked there, and we will not get the toast call of this one. That's it from this video. We'll be recording another video on proto preferences, where we will be creating the custom modules, and we'll register them, and uh, we'll be creating one more activity, and we'll be storing those the custom data. So probably I'll be uploading this in the later part. Thank you for watching the video. Have a good day.